Elijah's mind was forged in extremes, from the wilderness to royal courts, from quiet streams to the roar of Mount Carmel. His consciousness moved in constant tension between the visible and the invisible, the immediate and the eternal. Psychologically, Elijah demonstrates a remarkable interplay of courage, fear, faith, and existential awareness. His identity was anchored in divine calling, yet shaped by human vulnerability, isolation, and the weight of prophetic responsibility. To understand the psychology of Elijah, one must consider the cognitive, emotional, moral, and spiritual dimensions that intersected in his lived experience, shaping both his actions and his internal landscape. From the beginning, Elijah's cognitive orientation reflects a high degree of pattern recognition and moral attunement. He perceived the corruption of Israel's leadership, the idolatry pervasive among the people, and the long-term consequences of ethical compromise. Psychologically, this demonstrates anticipatory cognition, the ability to see beyond the present, to evaluate patterns of behavior, and to predict outcomes based on principle and observation. His decisions, whether confronting King Ahab or challenging the prophets of Baal, exhibit integrative reasoning, combining ethical insight, practical strategy, and the anticipation of human and divine responses. The prophetic mind, as exemplified by Elijah, operates on multiple temporal and moral planes simultaneously, perceiving immediate reality while simultaneously interpreting it through the lens of divine expectation and long-term consequence. Elijah's emotional landscape is equally complex. Courage, as a psychological construct, is not the absence of fear, but its regulation. Elijah exhibits profound courage in the face of threats far exceeding ordinary human capacities. He confronts tyrannical kings, challenges collective belief systems, and engages in situations of life-threatening danger. Yet underlying his courage is a psychological vulnerability, the awareness of personal risk, the emotional burden of isolation, and the anxiety inherent in being the singular voice of divine truth in a society indifferent or hostile to it. This combination of valor and vulnerability illustrates a mind operating at the edge of existential tension, where moral obligation intersects with self-preservation, and faith mediates the oscillation between fear and action. Isolation is a recurring theme in Elijah's psychology. The mind that perceives deeply, discerns truth, and evaluates ethical deviation often experiences profound separation from the social milieu. Social cognition in this context becomes both a tool and a burden. Elijah understands the intentions, weaknesses, and potential reactions of those around him, yet he cannot fully share the depth of his insight without risking alienation or incomprehension. The prophet's isolation is psychological as well as physical. Cognitive attunement to divine instruction, moral perception, and ethical responsibility creates a solitude of consciousness, where awareness of reality surpasses communal perception. This cognitive isolation is a hallmark of individuals whose awareness outpaces that of their environment, producing both insight and a sense of dislocation. Faith operates as the central stabilizing and motivating mechanism in Elijah's mind. Psychologically, faith integrates perception, cognition, and emotion. It provides a framework for decision-making, moral reasoning, and risk assessment. Elijah's trust in divine guidance allows him to act decisively, endure hardship, and maintain ethical consistency despite social opposition. Faith functions as both lens and anchor, structuring the perception of reality and sustaining resilience under extreme psychological pressure. The human mind, when oriented toward a transcendent principle, develops adaptive coping mechanisms, the capacity to tolerate uncertainty, manage fear, and maintain purpose amid adversity. Elijah's encounters with mortality reveal the psychological tension between courage and existential awareness. The prophet repeatedly faces threats of death, whether from Ahab and Jezebel or the consequences of challenging collective idolatry. Mortality awareness intensifies cognitive and emotional processing. Risk assessment becomes intertwined with moral reasoning. Fear is tempered by principle, and decisions are calibrated for both ethical integrity and survival potential. Elijah demonstrates advanced executive function, the integration of ethical judgment, strategic foresight, and emotional regulation under high-stakes conditions. Such cognitive emotional synthesis allows for deliberate action even when facing extreme uncertainty and personal danger. Creativity and problem-solving and strategic action is evident throughout Elijah's life. Whether orchestrating the confrontation on Mount Carmel, predicting droughts, or guiding Elisha, Elijah employs innovative cognitive strategies. Psychological creativity involves flexible thinking, pattern recognition, and anticipatory reasoning. Elijah's mind synthesizes observation, divine insight, and strategic planning into interventions that are both effective and symbolically resonant. Creativity in this context serves ethical, relational, and existential purposes. It communicates principle, resolves conflict, and reinforces moral and spiritual order. The psychology of confrontation is central to understanding Elijah. Confrontation requires social perception, emotional regulation, and ethical confidence. Elijah's confrontations are rarely impulsive. They are deliberate, informed by pattern recognition, strategic insight, and moral clarity. The psychological burden of confrontation involves anticipation of social response, management of personal risk, and regulation of emotional intensity. Elijah demonstrates the capacity to engage adversaries decisively while maintaining alignment with ethical principle, reflecting advanced executive and moral functioning. Elijah's periods of despair illuminate the depth of his emotional cognition. Following his confrontation with the prophets of Baal, Elijah flees to the wilderness, expressing profound feelings of exhaustion, fear, and loneliness. This psychological episode underscores the vulnerability inherent in sustained high-stakes moral and cognitive engagement. The mind, under prolonged ethical, social, and existential pressure, experiences emotional fatigue, moral doubt, and anticipatory anxiety. Elijah's vulnerability demonstrates that cognitive courage does not eliminate emotional fragility. It coexists with it, demanding periods of reflection, recuperation, and recalibration. The role of mentorship and relational cognition emerges in Elijah's interaction with Elisha. The prophetic mind recognizes the necessity of continuity, training, and relational transmission of knowledge. Mentorship involves empathic attunement, anticipatory guidance, and cognitive scaffolding. The mentor evaluates the mentee's capacities, predicts developmental trajectories, and provides interventions that balance challenge with support. Elijah's psychology demonstrates metacognitive awareness. He not only perceives and acts, but also anticipates the development of another mind, fostering resilience, ethical discernment, and skill acquisition in a context of uncertainty and moral complexity. Solitude functions as both psychological burden and mechanism for reflection. Elijah's retreats to wilderness, caves, and solitary journeys exemplify the necessity of cognitive and emotional recalibration. Human cognition, especially under extreme ethical and social pressure, requires space for reflection, synthesis, and moral evaluation. Solitude facilitates metacognition, evaluation of prior actions, integration of new insights, and ethical calibration. For Elijah, solitude allows alignment of cognition, emotion, and spirituality, creating coherence between insight, intention, and action. The interplay of fear, courage, and faith is dynamic throughout Elijah's psychology. Fear is ever present, the awareness of threat, social hostility, and personal limitation. Courage is the regulation of fear in service of principle. Faith is the cognitive emotional framework that sustains action despite fear. Psychologically, this triad exemplifies advanced integration. Emotional awareness, regulatory control, and principled motivation converge to produce adaptive, morally coherent behavior under extreme uncertainty. The human mind capable of such integration demonstrates both resilience and ethical sophistication. Prophetic identity introduces unique cognitive emotional challenges. The mind of a prophet perceives beyond the immediate, interpreting human behavior, ethical deviation, and divine principles simultaneously. Cognitive load is high. Observation, anticipation, ethical evaluation, strategic planning, and emotional regulation must function concurrently. Elijah's mind exhibits extraordinary capacity for parallel processing. He simultaneously navigates practical concerns, moral evaluation, and existential purpose. This cognitive architecture allows for decisive action and moral consistency under conditions of social opposition, personal risk, and ethical ambiguity. Elijah's psychological resilience is evident in his navigation of repeated crises. Drought, famine, royal opposition, social hostility, and personal despair constitute repeated stressors. Resilience arises not only from faith, but from cognitive integration, the capacity to process complex information, evaluate risk, anticipate outcomes, and maintain ethical coherence. Elijah demonstrates iterative adaptation, reflection, recalibration, and strategic engagement allow recovery and continued efficacy. Psychological resilience is therefore both emotional and cognitive, integrating insight, foresight, and principle to sustain function under extreme pressure. The tension between divine authority and human limitation is central to Elijah's inner life. Prophetic cognition requires recognition of human constraint, anticipation of social resistance, and dependence on external transcendent guidance. This dual awareness, human vulnerability juxtaposed with divine expectation, creates cognitive and emotional complexity. Elijah's psychological sophistication emerges from balancing these realities, acting decisively within human limitation while trusting in divine oversight, navigating uncertainty with courage, and integrating ethical principle with strategic calculation. Elijah's legacy demonstrates the psychological principle of integrative consciousness. the mind capable of synthesizing observation, moral insight, emotional awareness, strategic reasoning, and spiritual attunement, achieves coherence and efficacy in complex environments. His life illustrates that high-stakes moral and cognitive engagement generates vulnerability, stress, and isolation, yet also produces profound resilience, insight, and transformative impact. Human cognition, when oriented toward principle and guided by faith, can navigate extremes of threat, uncertainty, and ethical tension while maintaining coherence, moral integrity, and relational acuity. In summation, the psychology of Elijah exemplifies the integration of courage, fear regulation, ethical reasoning, emotional depth, strategic foresight, relational cognition, and spiritual attunement. His mind demonstrates the dynamic balance of vulnerability and resilience, insight and apprehension, isolation and relational engagement, principle and practical action. Elijah's life provides profound insight into the human capacity to navigate extreme moral and existential complexity. A mind attuned to divine guidance yet grounded in practical reality, capable of decisive action while sustaining reflection, capable of enduring isolation while cultivating relational continuity, and capable of transforming fear and vulnerability into ethical courage and sustained purpose. Elijah's psychology reminds us that human cognition is not merely instrumental, it is profoundly integrative, encompassing moral, emotional, relational, cognitive, and spiritual dimensions. Courage without reflection risks recklessness, insight without empathy risks alienation, principle without strategic awareness risks inefficacy, and faith without action risks stagnation. Elijah embodies the synthesis of these dimensions, demonstrating the extraordinary capacity of the human mind to act decisively, reflect profoundly, and endure existential tension while maintaining coherence, moral clarity, and relational sensitivity. Ultimately, the psychology of Elijah illustrates the human potential to integrate insight, courage, faith, emotional awareness, and moral responsibility into a coherent and effective life. His cognitive emotional architecture demonstrates resilience, reflective depth, strategic foresight, ethical integrity, and relational awareness, offering enduring lessons on the interplay of human vulnerability, principle, and transcendent guidance. The mind of Elijah navigates extremes with balance, insight, and courage, exemplifying the profound potential of integrated human psychology under the guidance of principle and faith.